My guest today is Geoffrey Booth, a guest to Haldanes Law Matters. And Geoffrey, not only are you my business partner, but you're a friend for more than half my life.
True. Just wait 1 second. There we are. The coin's in the jar.
That's kind of you, thank you.
No. Yes, it's a very, very long life you've had as well.
Well, you too, by the way. We're both still here. We're going to talk about longevity later, by the way.
Yes.
And some of your achievements, which are record-breaking, but we'll come to that. I want to keep listeners on tenterhooks. Can you remember how it was that you actually joined Haldanes? Because you had a career with a law firm called Hunter Glynn. Yeah, tell me.
Well, I don't know. I guess it was because I got to know the then partners of Haldanes, who were Jonathan Midgley and Warwick Haldane, and they were obviously in need of help at that time.
We were.
They were struggling. They were in a little office in Mongkok. I thought I've really got to help these chaps, and so I joined them and opened an office over here in Central. And now they've all moved in here, as you can see. So that's how it came about.
That's lovely. It's not the way I remember it. I remember we had a fabulous office in Central, and it was actually the first office in Central was where number 9 Queen's Road is now, and it used to be...
It's a shame you didn't keep it.
Yeah, it was the old Edinburgh Tower, I think. I think it was known as Edinburgh House in those days, and that was in
Holland House.
Was it?
Yeah.
The end of the 1970s.
Wrong country.
Yeah. Okay. So I remember you joined us, and I remember that we went from strength to strength immediately, which obviously was down to you.
A surprise.
What was it that was interesting about Haldanes? I mean, why did you join us?
It was a time when the firm I was in, Hampton Winthrop at the time, were going through a bit of a dynamic change and shifting in the partnership. And what I wanted to do, the combination of criminal and matrimonial, was something that was still going on at Haldanes, and it fitted rather better. The style that Haldanes were operating was right. more to my liking, and I knew both you and Warwick very well. And spent a lot of time on the squash courts with Warwick.
Yes.
A lot of time seeing you going up Lan Kwai Fong in your tight trousers with your gold chains that you used to wear in those days. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Looking like one of the Bee Gees. Do you recall?
One of the Bee Gees. Yes. As long as it was the right Bee Gee, I'll settle for that.
Which one is the right one?
That good-looking one with the beard.
Oh, okay.
So, and that's how it fell into place from my memory. We had the two offices, yes?
Yeah. Well, you had the Mongkok one, and I opened the one right here on the 8th floor of Ruttengy. And now
did you open the office?
The 8th floor, yeah. So it's just myself and then Elaine Longmore doing a bit of criminal, a bit of civil, mostly the ICAC stuff at the time. And then we expanded it with the civil and then the commercial. So we ended up spread over the 4 floors.
I see. Yeah, I remember all that now clearly. And tell me a little bit about how you found Hong Kong in those days versus today. And I asked that question because a previous guest was another of our associates, Tim Wan, and he was telling the story of the change in Hong Kong from the perspective of over the last 10 years or so. But we can talk about it, you and I, with a joint lifespan here of about 90 years.
Yeah, I think you'd have to make this podcast about 5 years long if we're going to go into the detail.
No, let's not do the details.
There'd probably be a lot of defamation and revelations that would get us in trouble.
I think so. Should we avoid those?
I have to try. It was a much more exciting place, wasn't it, back in 1979? The courts were fun. It was full of magistrates and judges who weren't afraid to have a bit of fun in court and make jokes. And there was no recording, so they could say things without worrying about it going onto some transcript for an appeal.
Yes.
And it was a much more pleasant environment in general in those days. Going out to Fanling was an adventure, a 2-hour car ride across a couple of level crossings, and it was like a day out in the country. Yeah. It was different world.
Largely without air conditioning, I remember. I used to have a Simca which was white and rust and no air conditioning. I'd have to stop 3 times on the way just to revive in the summer.
Yeah, I had a Volkswagen Beetle with no air conditioning as well. Yeah.
So those were very different days, and it was before the MTR, of course.
Yeah, they were building the MTR at the time, and Hong Kong was full of engineers from all around the world. Lots of Brits, Australians. And
nightlife was just opening up, of course. Discotheques and things.
There was one discotheque.
What was it?
Disco.
Oh, disco. Yeah.
Disco. Yeah. This is what I call our yesterday. Is we getting slightly off the legal theme, or?
I didn't know there was a legal theme. Well, some of those people, of course, ended up as clients, and it was an extraordinary colourful time.
We had an incredible collection of clients come through the doors over the years, didn't we?
And then we developed into the field of commercial crime, really, which has changed everything. Yeah? We took on the first commercial crime. It might have been before you joined us, actually. It was a case of...
Well, you'd done that Singaporean chap, and then we got in the Carwar Bank when I first joined, and that was a big case going on for a long time.
Yeah.
And then there were lots after. There's so many commercial crime cases.
Now,
the longest ever district court case we had.
Now, you're a father. You have a daughter and a son.
Yes.
And a daughter that's a successful barrister.
Yes, true.
So, for young people, because we do have an audience of young people apparently that listen into these sometimes, what would you say about young people, teenagers or a little older, joining as solicitors, joining the profession now as solicitors?
I'd say archaeology is a very good alternative, probably. No, joking aside. So for example, my daughter, she's a matrimonial lawyer, and that's something of a niche practice, and she's doing very, very well. And I think if you have an area that you can specialise in nowadays, fine, provided you find something you like. If we had our lives again, would we be lawyers again? I don't know.
Well, if I was living my life again and I knew that it was going to be like it has been, the answer is undoubtedly yes.
Yeah,
I mean, it's been fabulous, hasn't it?
Yeah, I would agree. We've been very lucky.
But
will they be so lucky in the future?
Yeah, I don't know.
As I said, laws nowadays, it's a lot more regulated. Law Society rules for solicitors are a lot tighter. We have a much more
stressful life as a result of it.
A stressful life with regard to clients, duties to clients and obligations, and we all have to do lots and lots of CPD points every year to keep up our. Even though we've been lawyers for years, we still have to go on a course on how to write letters every year or so. So life as a lawyer, there's a lot more restrictions and a lot more requirements than there were in the early days. But operating within that, I think you can still do very well. I mean, especially if you, as you become a specialist in some areas like regulatory work, you might go into insurance, regulatory work, for example, and do very, very well. And you move into banks, or you can go into private practice. But I think stresses in private practice are a lot more than they were before.
Possibly. Or maybe it's just with the passing years we see it. I mean, when we talk to our young ones here, they seem to be thrilled, actually, with their lifestyles, and at least the criminal department, they love it.
Yeah, I think you also have to have the life balance, don't you? Outside work, you have to have things that can relieve the stress and the pressure.
Keep you fresh.
Keep you fresh.
Can I talk about that? Because I know you're going to be very embarrassed by this.
Well, it depends what you're going to talk about that's going to embarrass me.
I promise
I'll let you have a certain latitude.
Okay, well, it's Iron Man. Now, you're blushing already. You've just completed an over 70s Iron Man event, is that right?
Totally inaccurate. No, it was
over
a
50s.
No, thank you. Right. It was a. I did an event called High Rocks, which is like a CrossFit thing where you, simple terms, you run a kilometre, then you do an exercise for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then you run another kilometre, and so you have 8 1 kilometre runs, and then 8 exercises. And some of them are quite brutal. You have to push a sled with I think it's 175k it weighs, and then pull another one, and all sorts of exercises, and it's quite grueling. And I got into it in this way because actually about last November they had one which I had a go at, and at that time I said to my daughter Madeline, I said, look, how can I get a smoking hot body as an older person?
She said, you've already got one, Dad.
No, she said, you can try cremation. And she said, an alternative to cremation, she said, is have a go at High Rocks. And looking back, I wish I'd gone for the cremation, actually, but I did the High Rocks, and I won the Hong Kong over 70s last year. And they did it again in May, and I thought, well, I can do it again. This time I'm going to train for it, because I didn't have the time last time properly, so I did it again. And this time when I did it, I won the over 70s, but I also got the world record for the fastest time it's ever been done by an over 70 in the world.
The world record, Jay?
Yes.
Are you in the Guinness Book of Records?
No, but in my mind I'm a world record holder until next week when somebody else breaks it.
I see.
But I'll always be able to say I was a world record holder.
Yeah, well, that's fabulous. And may I say, looking at you, it's a surprise. So, no, I'm only kidding.
But on work-life balance, I think that's it's good to have things outside of the law that keep you
essential.
Yeah, keep you sane, like you and your music, or Ian
Yes,
Winter on
music,
his saxophone playing. Let's not go into too much detail what you've been up to, but
marvellous. So can I actually turn back to the law, having established your extraordinary Iron Man prowess?
I thought we'd already said everything we knew about the law.
Well, more than we normally have to say. But on this occasion, I was wondering if we could just focus for a moment on something that's a bit unusual about both you and I.
Oh no, that'll be very embarrassing.
Well, let's try it.
Okay.
We're both solicitor advocates.
True.
Now, in the criminal division, I think there's only, I may be wrong about this, but there's probably 5 of us. And I think when it was first introduced a few years ago, we were the first and only solicitor advocates in the criminal division. Is that right?
We were the first two solicitors with high rights of audience.
And for those that don't know what we're talking about, it's the concept that was introduced in England some years ago, whereby certain solicitors are deemed worthy of having the same rights of audience, that's in the High Court, Court of Appeal, Court of Final Appeal and so on, as the barristers. And by some miracle or misjudgment, we were deemed to be worthy of that post. So having obtained that, it might be interesting, again, particularly for younger listeners, to have your view on that status. Has it got value to the practitioner and to the law generally and to the client?
Oh, definitely. I'm also on the higher rights of audience panel, and we assess solicitors applying for higher rights of audience. And so I see the solicitors who are quite keen to get that as well. And they set quite a high bar for it, actually, for qualifying.
They're not given away easily?
No, it's a written exam and also an oral appraisal of a performance in court with cross-examination and all sorts of other things, and skeleton arguments and so forth. Well, I think the starting point is it's valuable for the clients, and that's the reason, the justification for it in a lot of countries, because it means that your solicitor who's thoroughly familiar with the case can go into court for you on certain hearings, and you don't have to then bring in a barrister with the second level of expense who also doesn't yet know anything about the case, has got to be fully briefed. So it's helpful for the client. For the lawyers, it's I think it's for a firm like ours, it's good marketing that we had the 2 first criminal course solicitor advocates, because after all, primarily we were a criminal firm at one stage, much broader now, of course. I think it's useful, the whole system of the solicitor barrister, there's a bit more of interaction. It's not too much a complete fusion, break between the professions, because in most jurisdictions, as you know, there is no such division that we've got between purely solicitor, purely barrister. And so perhaps we're sort of, people like you and I, a bit of a bridge across the two, which may be useful.
Yes, I see that, and I think we ought to mention that we actually have a solicitor advocate in the civil division as well. We've got Nathan Wong, who's a solicitor advocate. So should we conclude it this way, that not only are you an Iron Man, you're a solicitor advocate, a father of a daughter that's a barrister, and by the way, a son that's a fabulous food and beverage manager, I might say. And all in all, we're both quite content with the careers we've had in Hong Kong.
Yes,
as solicitors.
It's been a very good 90 years between us. I think we can say thank you, Hong Kong, for that very much.
May I say that I hope for many more years in Hong Kong and with you as a partner, and enjoying the same sort of endeavours that we've enjoyed over the years.
That's
very much.
Very kind of you.
Thanks very much for slipping next door, Jeff.
My pleasure.
And being a guest.
I'll just take the money back out of the jar.
Yeah, it's yours, sir.